Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good day, and thank you for joining us on Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Tabak. I will moderate today's discussion. Our topic is screen time at holiday time. We're recording this program a few days before Christmas, and we're thinking about people getting together over the holidays and possibly being distracted by their smartphones, their laptops, their tablet computers. We want to ask today how this technology has added to or subtracted from the quality of our personal communications. To help us in this discussion, I have three guests. Angela Aley is a student at Cornell College and studying computer science and also studying a little bit of biology as well. And she's a junior and from Maryland. She'll tell us a little bit more about herself in just a moment. Timm is a teacher of social studies at Mount Vernon High School, a coach at Mount Vernon High School, coaching the basketball team, and a parent. And I brought him on for his experience in those roles. Rector has just come to Iowa this year to join the faculty of the University of Iowa. She teaches computer science, and her research has some special relevance to what we will be discussing here. So I'd like to begin by asking you about your own use of technology. So what kinds of devices you have, sort of what your own daily habits are. You get up in the morning, what do you check, what do you not check? So Angela, you're the college student who's grown up with this technology all around you.
Well, my alarm is actually my phone. So the first thing I see in the morning is my phone. And from there, I don't really check social media, not like right away, but I will definitely check social media. Some of them like Facebook or other, like definitely email before I like get out of bed. Okay. And I'm on my phone multiple times a day, checking emails or playing games. Like I spend a lot of time like with it just near me. I've never forgotten my phone because of that. I also have an iPod, which is very near and dear to my heart. So I listen to my iPod a lot. So those are my two main technologies that I always keep with me.
Now, Ed, you told me on the way out here that you, can we say this to the world? Yes. That you're living without a cell phone.
Yeah, so I get up in the morning and I have a radio alarm, which I've used forever. I go out and I grab the newspaper, which gets delivered at 4:30 a.m. and I read the newspaper for about 45 minutes, and then I go out and exercise. And I do have an iPod, but I don't know how to use it except my kids have put music on it, and so I listen to it as a musical device. Yep. And then at school, obviously, I have a laptop at school and we use computers, but we don't have cable TV at home. Right. My wife has an iPhone. Both my kids have iPhones. I've just chosen not to. And I live the life of a Luddite, I guess.
This is good.
It's a different perspective, I guess.
And Kyle, you're sort of in between here, right? So you're professionally involved. You're a little bit older than Angela, younger than me and Ed. Tell us about your...
I looked up this morning. I'm technically the older part of the Millennials. So I was raised, the first phone I had was a Nokia phone. So I actually use technology quite often. So I first wake up to actually a radio, not my phone. My grandfather gave that to me as a present, so it plays music sometimes, or sometimes it's just an annoying beep, so I wake up. But I check my phone first thing, and I tend to triage emails, meaning I figure out which ones are important, which ones aren't. So I try and do that while I'm still kind of groggy. But I use my phone and computer on a regular basis throughout the day for my job, but also for entertainment. Right. So I'll tend to watch some videos in the morning for breakfast and then use my laptop a lot for work. And my phone while I'm commuting to play games as well. So I play games too.
All right. So I'm going to share an anecdote that led me to propose this topic to our producers. I also teach computer science. I teach computer science at Cornell College. In fact, Angela's one of my students. And not with Angela, but with another group of students a couple of years ago, I took students on a tour of a local company. Involta is a company that operates a data center here nearby. And the people there made time in their day, and they asked an engineer to lead us through. And so we learned about the technology, we learned about the markets this company was serving. But at every turn, I saw my students stop to, looking down at their palms, checking their telephones. And I've got great students at Cornell College. But, in this case, I looked and I said, this person has taken time out of his day to show us his company. There are lots of other things he can be doing. So this is a matter of courtesy. And then, of course, I've taken them there so they can learn something that's relevant to their studies or their career aspirations. They can look things up on the web anytime. Why are we looking at our phones at this moment, right? So if you had any, I invite you now to tell me, if you had any experiences where you've been frustrated with colleagues or students or maybe with yourself with what you thought might have been inappropriate use of some of these technologies.
We, as a faculty at Mount Vernon, we've had lots of conversations like this. Many schools go to one-to-one, so
Right.
every student has. In fact, our junior high has a one-to-one program where every junior high student has a laptop, and that's with them. They check it out at the beginning of the year.
Right.
They have it with them. They take it home, whatever it might be. And the high school faculty, we've wrestled with that a lot, and whether that's the best use of our resources, that's the best way to do it. And we've come to the conclusion several times. I mean, we have access. We have computer labs, computer carts, all that kind of stuff. We probably have almost enough computers for one-to-one, but we don't assign kids a computer. And that's been a conscious decision to do that, where it allows us, I guess, to limit the use to when it's needed, you know what I mean? And hopefully avoid some of the distractions. Because I think, anything, technology is fantastic. I mean, I think it's changed the way I teach, it's changed lots of things like that, but it's like anything else. It can become a distraction. It's just part of my job and part of, I think, all of our jobs for your teacher is how to use that technology. And I think kids are much better at it than maybe some of the other people are because they've grown up with it.
So Angela, when you're sitting in the dining hall with your buddies at Cornell College, and are you ever frustrated that you're trying to talk to somebody, you think you have somebody's attention, and then you look across the table and they're buried behind a screen?
It varies from person to person. I had a friend freshman year, a really good friend, that it's sort of a joke with our friends that she would never know what's going on. She'd always be like, "Wait, what?" Because she was busy doing something else, and we'd have we'd be like, "These are the plans," and she'd look up and be like, "So what are the plans?" So that sort of thing, where she was busy on her phone. But for the most part, since we all have it, and we all understand that struggle, we're mostly good. But there are the certain people who can't put it down, who can't do that. But for the most part, we're all pretty good about paying attention to each other. It's a rare occasion where I'll be sitting at a table and it's just somebody on their phone, not listening to anything that's going on around them. That's usually a sign that something's not going good with them that day, and they just need to get distracted from the world.
Yeah.
Kyle?
I can think of a few different contexts and how I might react differently. So when I'm commuting, I see people a lot of times on the phone on the bus, and it's very safe to assume, they're just playing a game like I do, but I know there's a lot of people that read, and I think, you're actually doing something very productive, but we can't tell the difference when we see this, right? We just assume they're being passive, but we don't really know.
Right.
In the classroom, there's a lot of students that use laptops, and I don't really know if they're looking at the slides along with me. I tended to do that in undergrad because I would feel less anxious if I had a chance to read ahead or go behind again. And so again, I don't really know what they're doing behind the screen, if they're looking at some random website or if they're actually engaged with my class. So that makes it a bit of a tension inside. And then actually socially, I put my phone on silent so I can pay attention to people. And if I do pull out my phone, I think this is also because I work with people who are blind. I tend to verbally describe what I'm doing. So I'm like, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just responding to my mom because she has a pretty important question to ask me, or, I'm going to Google this now to follow up on our conversation. So they're involved in what I'm doing on the phone. And that is if I pull it out, of course. But yeah, so I have to make a conscious effort there.
So you just mentioned work with the blind, so maybe this is a good time to invite you to tell us a little bit about your program of research. we've invited you onto this program so that you could give a balance to Ed and I are the old guys who grew up without this technology are going to do all the complaining today. and you're going to tell us how this can be used in a productive way.
Sure. Yeah, so my the overarching umbrella is human-computer interaction. Okay. So anytime there's some technical device and a person, I am interested in that interaction between the two. And there's a lot of different ways you could look at it, like people's behavior on social media or what they do while they're on the go. Is it as easy to type when you're walking as opposed to just standing, for example? And then what I focus on is an area called accessibility. So the study of technology or building technology to improve the lives of people with disabilities or older adults. So I work with people who are blind or low vision, and so I try and use mainstream technology, so things off the shelf to try and help with people's lives. So an example is I built a system called Eyes-Free Yoga, meaning you do not need your sight, and it helps you learn yoga by giving detailed verbal instructions. And then I use something called a Microsoft Connect. Are you guys familiar? So the Microsoft Connect, you can put it on your mantle, and it has a 3D camera, and the first version uses infrared. And so I can actually assess a person's posture in 3 dimensions. And so what I do with that information is I assess how well they're holding Warrior One posture, for example, and then I give really detailed verbal feedback. So you don't need to see anyone else in a classroom, you don't need to see an instructor, you don't even need to see a screen. It just gives you enough feedback that you can practice yoga independently, regardless of the level of vision you have. So I always try and find ways to give more opportunities for people with disabilities. So in that aspect, exercise, but other areas as well.
So Ed, you're a coach, and so one of the complaints we read about the use of this technology, it's kind of like the worries they had when we were young, right? We were watching too much Beverly Hillbillies, right? We're watching television, and today we worry about young people indoors not getting the physical activity they need to be physically and emotionally healthy. So is that an issue for you in either your parenting, your teaching, your coaching, that issue of balance of life?
I think, as much as it's, I think, technology has opened up certain parts of the world, and I think it's closed down certain parts of the world to other people who don't experience certain things. I don't think there's as much, telling the kids to go outside. You know what I mean? I don't think there's as much as that, and I don't necessarily, that depends on individual parents. It depends on what your thoughts are and that kind of stuff. But I think that, like a lot of the things we did growing up, I don't think there's as many of those kinds of things. But my wife and I started biking, and she hooks her phone onto her bike, and it gives us direction. It tells how long we're going to be there. It tells us where to eat. And so it's amazing in that way, because otherwise, I would just be going blind, and because I'm a male, I know the directions, and we just figure it out. But it's been in that way, it enhances the experience of other kinds of things, like hiking and other things like that. It can really open some areas up. But it also, I think it depends. Again, it depends on how you use that. You know what I mean? I think it can close you down, and it can isolate you. I think with the elderly population, sometimes it can isolate you when you think you're being interactive, and then other times it can open up a whole new world to you. And I think that it depends on how you use that, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the responsible use of technology, I think, can really enhance your life. Actually, speaking of older adults, my grandmother, she's 91, and she also lives in eastern Washington, where it's a lot of ice and snow, and it's made it so they cannot physically travel to us for Christmas anymore. Right. But just a few weeks ago, my mom introduced her to Facebook. Yeah. And so she uses Facebook a lot, and now she can see what all of her family is doing. So she's like, oh, I know you made it to Florida safely because I saw you posted a picture of the beach on Facebook, so I'm not so worried anymore. So for her, it's been really nice, but I agree that if you use it too much, perhaps, then you're going to cut yourself off in some ways. Yeah.
So Angela, you're living 1,000 miles away from your home at Cornell College. A previous generation of college students had to line up in the hall to use the one pay phone to call home once a week, right? Yeah. How do you connect with family from?
I use texting mostly. Okay. Me and my dad and my mom, we have a group chat, and they'll just text me every now and then. It's sort of, we have a a mandatory I'm alive text. I don't really like, it's like if I text you, you have to respond within a certain amount of time to make sure I know you're alive. I'm really bad at doing it. My brother's much better, and they keep reminding me about that. But like, cause I know my brother will respond to me like I'm alive, and then he'll drop out and he'll stop the conversation. But I like, if I'm gonna respond, I like to have a conversation with them. So I try and wait till I'm ready to have a conversation. So sometimes a few hours and they get annoyed. But it's definitely, we text a lot. And then like on Thanksgiving, and because I don't go home during Thanksgiving, we would Skype, and it'd be cool to see them. And like every now and then, more freshman year than any other past year, we've Skyped. But Skyping is also really nice. And that's mostly how we communicate.
Very good. I'm going to take a chance here, folks, and tell you a story. Last summer, I did some work at the University of Iowa, and at the university they have orientations for new students throughout the summer. So at the end of my week, my wife joined me in Iowa City for the week. We stayed in a hotel in Iowa City. We went out to dinner at one of the restaurants, and as we were leaving, we saw two young people leaving the restaurant, a young man and a young woman. The woman was going first, the man behind her. So these are new students for the university. 17, 18 years old. And I saw the woman walk out first, and I saw the man, young man, walking behind her with his head bowed down. I turned to my wife and I said, you know, if I were 17 and I were walking behind that, I'd be looking at something else besides the floor. She said, well, that's Pokemon Go. I had never heard of this game before. So that made me think, you know, these are young people coming to college for the first time, and instead of making conversation, you know, I'm a new student here, Angela, you're a new student. Where are you from? Where are you from? And we go back and forth and make a new friend at arriving at college. But instead, I'm walking there with my head down in this screen.
Well, as a person who, like, there's a lot of, oh, I'm a new student, you're a new student. There's so much of that it just is going to happen. But also, it's funny. Even at our school, Pokemon Go, they had groups of like ways to get to know each other. Of like they'd have people walk around our campus and get Pokemon Go stops. Like there was definitely social aspects of that game too. It's so popular, and it's so easy to play on campus that like there's still people who like will be like meet in the commons at like 6 o'clock on a Thursday or whatever, and they'll walk around with each other and meet each other. So yes, he might have been soloing it, which a lot of people do, but there are ways to use that as a way to meet other people. And I bet he might have even been talking to her in the bar or wherever you saw them walking out of the restaurant.
Red Lobster. But
yeah, okay.
It's, you know, out of the classroom, several times I'll walk through the hallway, and it's just amazing because we'll have kids like over lunchtime, or if they have an open period. I mean, I'll see a group of students sitting there, and sometimes there'll be, but many times there'll be no interaction. I mean, there'll be 5 people, 5 phones, and it's like, it doesn't matter whether there's anybody else there, they're engaged with their phone rather than with another human being. And oftentimes I'll rib them a little bit and say, I mean, really? I mean, there are 3 other people here, okay? They might be as interesting as your phone if you ever would have a chance to find out. And
I'm very curious about that because, I mean, when I was a teenager, you got these breaks between classes, and there's a little bit of flirting and catching up with friends, and all this kind of stuff happens.
One thing that's really changed is, I mean, as soon as people leave their classroom, some teachers allow phones in the classroom, some teachers don't allow phones. It's teacher preference.
Okay.
And so I don't allow kids to use their phones in my class. In fact, if it goes off or they're using it during class, then I take it away from them and get it back at the end of the day.
Okay.
But it's amazing. It's the second they step out of the room, I would bet 90% of the students immediately, I mean, they have to find out what went on, okay, in that hour they were in class, because what went on Twitter, what went on, you know, who texted whom, and who, you know, whatever happened, because it's 52 minutes, and they've been unconnected for 52 minutes, and they're very apprehensive about the fact they might have missed something in that period of time.
I'm just as guilty of that. If I'm like taking a flight, or if I'm lecturing myself, I definitely am checking it right away to see like what emails did I miss, or, you know, did someone in my family contact me, or did my husband contact me? So I guess I'm guilty of both worlds.
Did you grow up with any rules in your classroom, or did you have any rules in your home where you grew up?
Oh yeah, actually I'm going to introduce a new technology, really old. It's called the Tamagotchi or Gigapet.
Yes.
So when I was in 5th grade, that was the big thing where you had a little animal you had to feed and take care of. And we definitely were not allowed to play with those during class. And so we all had to learn how to pause our game so it wouldn't advance. And you would hide it in your pencil box in your desk. And then the moment break came, you're like, oh, I need to feed it really quick. You put it back. So we had rules and we had to respect those rules or they would also take them away. And I totally understand that. In the home, we didn't receive a cell phone until we were 16, and that was because we were driving, and my mom wanted to make sure she could contact us or that we could ask for help when we needed it. So, and now in my current home, my husband and I put our phones and television away for dinner, but we don't have any other hard rules in terms of how we manage our technology use.
So I do some work with high school teachers. I teach workshops and short courses for high school teachers. And in one of these summers, I was working with a group, and there was one woman in the group who gave me this line that she was super strict in her classroom, right? If the cell phone even could be seen out of the back, the student didn't have to use the phone. If she could see a phone peeking out of a backpack, she took that thing away. And she made it clear to all of us, take it away. Absolutely no exceptions. Now, we had that week a special lecture from a distinguished computer scientist who lightened up our week there. And during the lecture, what happened? My friend's cell phone went off. The strict high school teacher not only had her own phone go off in the middle of this special event, but her ringtone was the theme to Harry Potter.
That's amazing.
So you sound pretty relaxed about this in your classroom. You feel like you give your students some guidelines, and it's not that much.
It's never really been a problem. I mean, occasionally, if somebody, maybe early, you take somebody's phone away, it's not a big deal. But I guess one of the things that's changed, because I teach U.S. history, I teach American government, is it's really affected how I teach. Because I don't talk about dates anymore. Right. Because they have an iPhone with them, and so why would I want them to memorize a date? Because they can have that at their fingertips anytime. That's not what they need to know. And I think a lot of teachers kind of struggle with that. Because, there's certain dates you have to know. You have to know December 7th, 1941. You have to know certain dates. And I'm like, you don't really need to know those dates. Because, ask your iPhone, if they really want to know that, they can have they can get their phone out and they can know a date. So instead, I think it's made me more teach concepts and understanding the trail of history and understanding how things interact and that kind of stuff. And I think it's made me a better teacher in that way, is that I'm not so focused on, memorize this date, memorize that date, which I guess unless you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire isn't all that interesting anyway. It's not,
Right. So in my own teaching, I haven't settled on any rules. I don't think I tell you guys anything. But I often invite students in the classroom to check me on something or to look up something that will add to my presentation. There might be a detail that I haven't put in my notes, and I'll turn to Angela and I say, help me out, Angela, look this up for me, and get an answer that way. I have had some cases where I don't require my students to bring a laptop to class yet, even though I'm teaching computer science. Many do. I'm sure some are distracted. Angela will tell me how much they're really distracted. But I haven't worried too much about it. Do you? In your classes, do you?
In college, not so much. Like in high school, we weren't allowed laptops. We weren't given the Wi-Fi password for our school. So we were very much, it was sort of a by teacher room of rule, but there's always the school rule was no cell phone, so that was sort of the guideline. But also I really don't like my physics teacher from high school for this reason. Well, for other reasons, but for this reason, we go on field trips.
Speaking to the whole world.
I know. I don't really care if he hears. But he'd be talking to a bunch of high school students who are in their teens. Be like, well, I'm not going to bring this physical measuring instrument because you all must have this thing in your pocket. We all have iPhones, so we don't need. And I was just I specifically held off getting an iPhone or a smartphone for that reason. I was just well, yes, I can afford this, and I could do that, a lot of other people can't. And his just assumption that we all had our smartphones and we would all have this technology just always irked me. It was like, it was the worst thing to me, because I was just like, there are so many, like, you don't know, this is a public high school, you don't know the background of all these people. How dare you assume we all have this $200 like piece of technology in our pocket? It irked me so much. But like in college now, most people have, like, I only know like one person who doesn't have a smartphone. It's different there because you're older and you're away from home, and most people bring laptops. So a laptop, when they're distracted, distracts me sometimes because I can see it easier. But also there is a respect, I think, in college more than high school of I'm using my screen, like of I'm at school for school, not to be distracted. So that's at least what I've.
Yeah.
We're near the end of our 30 minutes, and so I'd like to ask you to make a special contribution here, Kyle. Could you tell us a little? You've told us a little bit about your research, but there are other things happening at the university that are also helping people use technology to connect and participate more fully in the society. Are you familiar with some of these, or am I putting you on the spot here?
Well, I have my colleague Juan Pablo.
Right, this is what I'm thinking of. Yep.
Yes, yes, he's been a wonderful coworker as well. So he actually does a lot of research with children and specifically trying to give them access to better activities in the classroom. So using iPads to facilitate play, or even just exploring how children explore and use iPads when they're younger, and figuring out when children are able to figure out how to manipulate buttons or perform certain activities. And he's also interested in how well you can educate children and at what ages should they be using an iPad versus, something more passive activity or something more active learning and that sort of thing. Yeah, so.
And I've heard him speak about work with autistic children.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he's worked with children with autism, not just typically developing children, right?
All right, so we've got time here for sort of each person to give us a guideline for the audience. Maybe they're going home to their families. One of my students told me today, another student, that the rule in his home is that you're allowed to refer to the cell phone at the dinner table, but only once. Are there any other guidelines, like none in the bedroom, or don't take it to bed, or what would you?
Oh. Yeah. So I have a thought related to that, which is with self-reflection and responsible use, I think that technology doesn't have to replace important activities. So I actually do bring my phone into the bedroom, and that's because I listen to a podcast to help me fall asleep. So responsible use of technology can enhance your life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think one of the things is, with our kids, we never allowed them to take technology to bed with them, just because that could be a distraction. So that was the only hard and fast rule we had. I mean, they could use it other places, but not when they're supposed to be sleeping.
Okay. Any rules, Angela? Advice for the audience?
I would say the most important thing is to be self-aware. If you're one of those people who is addicted and can't put it down, find a time in your day to put it down and just take some time away. If you take it to the bedroom, you're not going to sleep and you're just going to be on YouTube all night, like, don't take it to bed. Just be self-aware of what you can and can't do with it in your life, and then just go with that.
Okay. Well, I stand between all of you here. I do have a cell phone, but I don't have a smartphone. When I started as a software engineer 30 years ago, we had one copy of the manuals chained to a desk in the back of the room. This technology has changed the way I work. I worry a little bit about being on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But on the whole, a plus for us, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for this very interesting conversation. 3 very different perspectives, or people with different kinds of complementary experience. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us, and have a great time with your families talking face to face in the next couple of weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.